Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Welcome to the first webinar for the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform Initiative. We have received lots of questions ahead of this webinar, which we hope that we will be able to address during our presentations. So if I'll just talk you through a first few housekeeping rules before we launch into the full webinar. As you'll have seen, we do have a Q&A section on this webinar, so please do post any questions into the Q&A rather than into the chat so that we can try and answer your questions throughout the webinar as we go through. This webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on our website shortly. We will also put up an email address where you can sign up to our mailing list so that you can be notified as and when the webinar is available, and there will also be subsequent Q&A posted on there as well. So if you do have subsequent questions that you feel haven't been answered through the webinar, please do email us and we will do our best to answer those. So firstly, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So I'm Jo Latimer and I'm Head of Neurosciences and Mental Health at the MRC. I'm also pleased to welcome Dr. Stephen Simpson, who's the Director of Research at Versus Arthritis, Professor David Walsh, who is our recently appointed Director of the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform, and Professor Andrew Carr, who is the Chair of our International Scientific Advisory Board for this initiative. So I will just give a little intro as to the initiative as a whole, but just for those of you who aren't fully aware of UKRI and how we came about, I'll just give a quick update as to the organisation as a whole and how we've come to partner with Versus Arthritis on this really exciting initiative. So UKRI was established a couple of years ago in 2018. It now comprises all 7 of the research councils, plus Innovate UK, Research England as well, forming one large organisation so that we have a better voice for science to government, but also allows us to have opportunities for doing initiatives, bigger initiatives than we've been able to do in partnership across all the councils and partner organisations of UKRI. If you're interested, each council does have a sector-specific strategic delivery plan that is available on the website, and this aligned to the wider UKRI strategy, which is also available on the UKRI website. As I mentioned, UKRI does afford us the opportunity for working much closer together with additional funding so that we can do bigger initiatives across the Research Council remits. And the Advanced Pain Initiative is one of these initiatives that we've been able to successfully bid for in partnership. So this is a partnership between UKRI and the specific partner agencies under UKRI are the Medical Research Council and our sister councils, BBSRC and ESRC. And we've partnered with Versus Arthritis, each putting in £12 million into a large 5-year initiative which will be comprised of 4 different work streams, which I will go on to outline in my subsequent slides. I'm also pleased to say that this is opportunity for increased collaborative approaches, not just with the charity sector, as we are partnering with VA, but also with industry partners. And we're pleased to say that Eli Lilly is the first industry partner that is part of our consortium. It's also a really important way that we can also connect better with patient representatives as part of this initiative. And we will go on to outline through the speakers as to how there can be patient involvement in the various strands of the APDP. Next slide, please. So the APDP really is an initiative that we hope will be transformative for the pain community more broadly over the next few years. It really is set up so that it could be kind of flexible and responsive to the needs of the community and will hopefully provide a sustainable approach for pain research going forward. The first part, and the reason you're here, is to find out more around our consortia call that we've recently launched. And this is very much the first step on building up a holistic advanced pain discovery platform that crosses the research domains all the way through biological through to psychological research. Building on that, we will also look at the data needs of the research community and how we can assure that those are addressed appropriately, and we are looking to pull together an open access online data platform where everyone can access various data sets that will be generated as part of the consortia. But we also hope that when people see the utility of the data platform, they will also look at inputting previous data that they have, so that really is a data platform that can be used in a really great forward-looking way for the community. We will also look at having some bioinformatics work associated with this as well, so that we can really interrogate our data, but also the other research projects that come out of this initiative. And the fourth work stream that is complementary to the others is around an additional funding pot for research that's open not just to the consortia that may be funded through the first consortia call, but open to the whole research community to really interrogate the complexity of pain and really looking at the drivers of the pain process. We hope that by the end of these funding streams, we really will have a holistic approach to looking at pain with the whole community brought together, aligned to really answer the questions that are needed for us to move the pain research field forward. In terms of the consortia call, you'll have seen information is available on our website. We have pre-announced it with an expressions of interest stage now being open. And I think it's important to note that this really is an interactive process. It's really iterative with the panel, and we hope that we can all work together to build some really exciting consortia. Professor Walsh is there also on hand to help with questions as they arise and to help bring the community together when we look across the consortia as a whole. We will look to, following the expression of interest phase, those who are invited to the next stage, we will look at full applications in due course, with looking to have the consortia to begin fully in April 2021. And I will say this is a big investment, £14 million, and it's really important to stress that we are looking for big ideas, ones that really will transform the pain research field going forward. And it really should look across the breadth of the research fields that are involved in the pain processing. And we really hope that the research community can build together a really exciting consortia that we can build on in future years to come. So I'll finish here, and I'll now pass on to Dr. Stephen Simpson, who will introduce the next section.
Thank you, Jo. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And I'd like to just share my enthusiasm that Jo just shared about her excitement about this partnership. Next slide, please. No, previous slide, please. Just a little bit for you about who we are as an organisation. We, Versus Arthritis, is the largest organisation in the UK committed to helping people with musculoskeletal pain. And our role really is to amplify the voice of people with arthritis and decision makers at all levels. And our mission is to work with and for people with arthritis to amplify and push against and defy arthritis at all levels. We support services and help people in the now through our helpline, our online digital assistants, our virtual assistants, and through local branches and groups across the 4 nations of the UK. And we play an important role in influencing to bring about change. We also invest heavily in research. Over the last decade, we've invested over £250 million in research across all areas of musculoskeletal diseases, and have played an instrumental role in a number of landmarks across the years. We're also pushing ahead and pushing ourselves towards the forefront of pain research, and hopefully you'll hear this will come across in the presentation today. And we've developed as part of this some long-term strategic strategies with industry. Next slide, please. So why pain? Well, it's really important to get across for Versus Arthritis. This actually is not an emergent formed priority. In fact, over a decade ago, a strategic review led to the funding of the Centre of Excellence at Nottingham that David Walsh leads currently. So we've been looking at and tackling the problem of pain over a number of years. Next slide, please. But since 2015, we've really pushed ahead, and the journey has been, since 2015, has taken a number of logical steps. The first piece for the charity, we informed ourselves about what pain meant for people with arthritis. And although we knew that pain was an important part of their lives, what came across from this ethnographic research that we did was that pain simply colours everything. It was the #1 priority for people with arthritis that we spoke to. That really kicked into play a change, a moving up a gears in terms of how we were going to tackle pain through our research. And since then, we've worked in 3 fundamental ways. Firstly, we've developed an evidence base. We've continued to do that, working with over 100 clinicians and healthcare professionals and people with arthritis. And with an expert group, this led to the creation of our roadmap for pain. And this is a document that's really helped us formulate our strategic approach and synthesize into 14 key areas. Across the same time frame, the second approach for us has been to continue to invest in the challenge. So we started to dial up our funding in pain through a number of regular pain research challenges. And this has led to a significant increase in our portfolio in a way of stimulating research to pain through our research community. A third strand of our approach has really been to work with partners and collaborators across the sector, including from industry and government. And the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform is a really good example of this. And you can see on the right the number of interactions and partnerships that we've been developing. And pain has become a specific and important priority, not just in terms of research, but for the charity versus arthritis, that we are working towards a future where pain no longer limits the lives of people with arthritis. And that's a truly important part of a guiding star for our journey in pain. So what are we doing about it now? Next slide, please. Well, as I've said, we continue to move up the gears in tackling pain as a strategic priority. And for versus arthritis, this is about delivering services for people and influencing change. But it's also a means for us to approach this in targeted areas of pain research, the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform being one of those. We're also working on areas of drug development and clinical and experimental medicine in pain through the translational research collaboration that we have with the NIHR. So the APDP is an important centerpiece of a larger and broader ranging effort by the charity to tackle pain. We're also focusing in other ways too, that we need to meet the unmet challenge of pain, and it can't just be through the biomedical route. And it's important the APDP, as Joe has said, encompasses a range of ways and means of tackling and unpacking the complexity of pain, including the biopsychosocial. But we've also recognized that we need to stimulate other ways of pain, stimulate other ways of finding new solutions for pain too, that are ostensibly not biomedical, and that we're doing this through a new global challenge prize that we're also developing. So for us, it's really important that this collaborative effort, and we're really excited about the fact we've joined forces with the councils under UKRI and also our industry partners. The fact that we have a fantastic new scientific director that I'll introduce in a second, and also a very strong scientific advisory board. I'm delighted that Andy's been able to join us. So for us, the collaborative nature of this is truly important. Although 75% of pain is musculoskeletal in origin, there are many other forms of chronic and persistent pain. And for us as a charity, we really felt that we would serve ourselves better working with others across the sector to learn across different conditions of pain. And that will really strengthen our hand. And I think this will be evident through the Advanced Pain Discovery Platform in how we unpack and understand pain. So I'd just like to finish, if I can, next slide, please, about the importance of involving people with the condition in your research and how we've tackled this. We know that there are a number of ways in which people with conditions can be involved. That can be through participation in research, through ever-increasing engagement in the research question. That's really important. But on top of this, and equally important, is the involvement of people with the conditions in your research. And by this, we mean people able to help shape and engage and inform the research directly and to be part and partnership with the research as it's developed. How have we done this? Well, we know that the ultimate benefit of this work will be to improve the lives of people in pain. For versus arthritis, this is so that people's lives are no longer defined and limited by pain. And so it's really self-evident that it's vital that we work as well as we can with and for people, involving them in the research. As a partnership through the Advanced Pain Discovery platform, we've done this. We've involved patients along the journey. That journey I showed you earlier to the pain roadmap and beyond, for us was crucial that we brought in the voice of people with arthritic conditions and musculoskeletal conditions into the equation. That's been truly vital in shaping the journey to date. So they've been integrated also into the International Scientific Advisory Board and also through the process of developing the APDP. The management board and the funders are committed to ensuring effective and meaningful PPI across the consortia. So what does this mean for you? And it's evident that there are a number of ways in which involving patients and carers and people with the conditions in your research, and we've listed them here, but it can improve a range of elements, not just the scientific questions at hand, but also a legitimacy to the influence, transparency in the decisions that we make. It can strengthen the speed at which patients are recruited to clinical studies, but it can also inform and strengthen the scientific questions at hand. So what we want to see you do in your applications, and we'd be happy to answer questions and work with you, is to see that you've clearly involved people with the condition that you're studying in your planning, but not just show evidence of how you are planning it and that you have involved the voice of people with the condition, but also how you plan to involve people with the conditions in your consortia. So that's a really important part of this endeavour, so that we can really meet the needs of people with different conditions of pain. I'd like to stop here, and I think it's my turn to hand over to our Scientific Director of the APDP, David Walsh. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So the Advanced Pain Discovery platform is shamelessly ambitious. It can only happen because of the world-class expertise and capabilities that developed in the UK through different specialities over recent years. It'll be a robust platform from which big ideas will be pursued, make step changes for the lives of people with chronic pain. It will be transformational, doing something different to what can be done through traditional funding streams. The Advanced Pain Discovery platform will combine the strengths and diversity within its consortia. It'll comprise the world-leading individuals who make up its consortia, plus the synergies that come from working together, plus the new capacity that this investment from UKRI versus arthritis and industry will catalyse. We don't expect each consortium to do everything for all pain, but the consortia will work together to enable the Advanced Pain Discovery platform as a whole to achieve its ambition. Our ambition is to build on the UK's undoubted capacity and expertise in pain research. We'll expand the knowledge base to realise the opportunities raised by the complexity of pain rather than seeing complexity as a barrier. We'll identify novel targets and mechanisms. We'll develop tools and biomarkers to enable targeted diagnosis and intervention. We'll build cohorts, biorepositories, data sets and analytical methods to help understand diverse aspects of chronic pain in the diverse people who suffer from it. We'll develop interventions which help people with chronic pain, interventions which reverse the increasing burden of pain seen in recent decades. Interventions themselves can be diverse: pharmaceutical, psychological, lifestyle, devices, surgery. Interventions can be targeted at the individual or public health initiative. The information we generate will be of high quality and relevant to ensure that people with chronic pain will benefit. Pursuing our aims will lead the Advanced Pain Discovery platform to generate a legacy of enduring and expanded research capability and impact. Understanding of chronic pain will be transformed, integrating pain's biological, psychological and social aspects. Knowledge, data biorepositories, infrastructure and expertise within the Advanced Pain Discovery platform will be shared and accessible in order to maximise benefit to people with chronic pain. The Advanced Pain Discovery platform will interface with other facilities, leading to new partnerships within the UK and abroad, academic, commercial, health service, public health, new partnerships between disciplines and between disease areas. We will maximise the profile of chronic pain, people who suffer, and the individuals and organisations that have joined together to solve the problems of pain through the Advanced Pain Discovery platform. The APDP will benefit each corner of our society, irrespective of age, sex, race and social class. We'll create a new and better way of working, converging individual interests to best benefit people with chronic pain. The APDP will ultimately deliver completely new approaches to pain management. I'd like to hand over to Andy Carr from Oxford, who chairs the APDP's International Scientific Advisory Board.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Joe. This is a really, really exciting initiative, and I was honoured to be asked to chair the International Advisory Panel. So we've got a nice range of experts from a range of different countries, a range of different aspects of pain research and pain management. So I think we are hopefully going to be well placed to support the funders and to support David in achieving these objectives. And if next slide, please. I think if I was to encapsulate this in some sort of concise way, would be to say that the role of the advisory panel is to make sure that this money is, this amazing funding is spent on doing something really exciting. So let's take the research into pain into new places. And that means encouraging and supporting existing pain researchers who are doing wonderful work and for whom new funding will just release them, allow them to do something really exciting. But just as importantly, to bring into pain research people who hadn't previously considered it as a possibility. And let's try and bring the best and the brightest minds, the freshest ideas into pain research and make a difference over this funding cycle. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I hope that the advisory panel can work with David and with his ideas and work with the funders to do something really transformational. So I'm going to hand back now to Jo and ask her to take us through the next steps, I think, of the Q&A session. Is that right, Jo?
Yes, we're now into the question and answer session of the webinar. Just like to thank all my fellow speakers, and hopefully you've got a flavour of what the APDP aims to do, and hopefully some of the questions have been answered. Claire will now read through some of the questions that we've already received, not only through the Q&A box. If anyone does have questions, please use the Q&A function in the webinar on Zoom. So if Claire could just read out some of the questions and we'll go through them.
Thanks, Jo. Hello there, my name's Claire Farmer. I'm the Programme Manager at Versus Arthritis, who is responsible for delivering on the APDP. So I'm going to sort of chair this Q&A session here. So as you're aware, you're invited to submit questions in advance to be answered by the panel today. And thank you to everyone that did that. We had a really good number of questions coming through. So we'll start by going through some of those. Hopefully we'll have answered many of your questions in the presentation. And in addition, as Jo's mentioned, you can submit through the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll aim to get to some of these questions as well. Please don't worry if your question isn't answered today. We'll be putting a full Q&A document with all the questions and the answers, as well as a recording of this webinar on the MRC website over the coming weeks. So if your question isn't answered today, it will appear on the website at one point. Okay, so for the first question, I know this was touched on briefly, but which diseases will the APDP target, and are there any particular important areas of focus? So Dave, perhaps I could direct that one at you first.
Yes, so we're not restricting to any one particular disease. Which ones should be being targeted? Ones which have the biggest burden for chronic pain. ones where we're at a stage in our understanding that we can really make a step change now, work on them. And one of the principles behind the APDP is that in particular diseases, research might have happened that's relevant to other diseases as well. One of the things that we'll be looking for is for people to be sharing ideas and information across diseases, rather than necessarily focusing entirely on one specific disease.
Thanks, Dave. Did any of the other panelists want to come in on that one, or are you happy?
I think it's important that, you know, we haven't restricted it to specific diseases, because we want to see the really exciting ideas come from you, the research community. And, you know, as Dave said, the consortia will be linked up so that there will be crosstalk between those, so that we can hopefully understand pain better across a breadth of disease conditions.
Thanks, Joe. And perhaps linked with that, we did have a question around, will the different consortia need to be complementary in their activities, or even integrate and coordinate their activities? So perhaps do you just want to follow up with a bit more on that?
Yeah, before we move on, I think Stephen
I was just going to labour the point that Joe and David already made, except to say that I think in this world increasingly where we need to work across mechanisms of different diseases, I think it makes sense that one of the values of working across different conditions of pain is what we'll learn from the different conditions. Even while a consortium might be working on and focusing on one condition of pain, I think there's an opportunity to learn across consortia. That probably segues into the next point.
So in terms of complementarity of the consortia, we will look, as I said, it's an iterative process, the expression of interest phase, where we will look at what's been submitted, so that, you know, we may then subsequently get in contact with each of the PIs to see whether there is more that we can do to support you, but the community as a whole, see where there are complementarities between the consortia, and see whether there are cross-cutting needs of those as we move forward. Because we are quite conscious that what we want to do is build a long-standing platform where people can get together, can start interrogating questions across all the consortia, and see where there are cross-cutting agendas that we can look at. Don't know, Dave, if you wanted to add anything additional to that?
Oh, sorry, unmuted. Yeah, I entirely agree, Joe, that it's important that people are outward looking as well as focused. Obviously it's difficult as an applicant to know how you're going to interface with other consortia when you don't know what the other consortia are. You may be aware of other people who are other groups which are putting themselves forward as consortia, but it's that willingness at this stage to interact with other people, to synergize with other groups, that's really important.
Great, thank you. Claire, next question.
Sure. Does the APDP cover a specific age range in terms of cohorts and also patient involvement? Stephen, I don't know if you want to pick up around the patient involvement there.
So I think the important thing is to think about the fact that the applications should cover a whole range of conditions. For example, in versus arthritis, one of our focus is on young people, so we fund a lot in adolescent rheumatology. So there will be some important questions across the life course, I think, that we would recognise the APDP can tackle. And I think the bigger driver here is the big ideas that as Joe has well articulated, the big ideas the consortia can formulate. And I think, you know, where it is appropriate to focus on a different age group, then that can help inform the question and the answer. But no, we're not restricting it. I think we would want it to be broad again and around the ideas and the questions you're answering. In terms of patient involvement, I think there is an ongoing drive to be as inclusive as possible across all age ranges. And again, you know, the opportunities, and obviously there are natural challenges with younger people in research, but yeah, we would encourage that depending on the question you're answering.
Thanks, Stephen. So just a slightly more technical one here, which actually we've been asked a number of times, is about whether collaborators or co-investigators and industry collaborators from outside the UK can be involved in consortia. So Jo, perhaps I can hand that one to you.
So if I tackle the first one in terms of international collaborators, as ever with our funding rules, we do encourage collaboration, but in terms of what's needed, there would need to be strong justification at this stage for involving international collaborators if the work cannot be done within the UK. That doesn't mean that work can't be aligned to other initiatives that are ongoing. And in terms of industry partnership, we do of course encourage that. They would need to adhere to our terms and conditions, and we will post some further information alongside with this webinar on our website as to how people can best engage with industry. So as I mentioned at the outset, we do already have Lily on board as one of our funders for this, but individual industry partners are able to collaborate with individual consortia across numerous consortia if they so wish. But we would encourage you to contact us through the email address, and then we can talk you through the process for that.
Thanks, Jo. So the next question, is sustainability of the consortium something to consider when putting in the complete application? David, I'm going to hand this over to you. I know you touched on this in your presentation.
Yes, so this isn't a flash in the pan. I don't honestly expect all of the problems we're planning to be solved in a 4-year funding stream like this. And really what we're wanting to do here is to catalyse a step change in the way that it's approached. So there needs to be durability, but also that's not setting up a castle that will remain the same for the rest of eternity. It needs to be flexible and to move with the need and where the opportunities are. But certainly we're looking for consortia that will be disruptive, if you like, will change the way that things are in the future and will leave a legacy. Clearly, we don't want to spend a lot of money on a particular data set that ends at the end of a 4-year period. It does need to continue and follow through to what will be left to solve in 4 years' time.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come in there? Nope. Okay, so the next question, how should a consortium be composed in terms of clinical and academic researchers and partners from industry, and what do you mean by high impact? I'm going to direct that one again. Dave, perhaps do you want to take it first?
So what do we mean by high impact? The primary aim of this is impact for patients. That's why Stephen has emphasised so much patient involvement. But again, much of what's done within the next 4 years with the APDP may be quite a long way from actually having impact in patients. So it's that pathway to that impact that's important. There are other impacts as well, and there are a number of stakeholders in this, each of whom I'm sure you can work out what their motivation and incentives are. But I think it's important to keep bringing that back, impact for patients.
Thanks, David.
Can I just add, Claire, because I think the question as well, and I wanted to support Dave in that. I think that there are a range of ways in which we can look for impact, but I think the part of the question was around clinical and academic investigators and industry, and I think again I think it's been stressed throughout the webinar, and hopefully viewers will get this, that we want the sort of multidisciplinary approach should rule, and the opportunity to get a breadth of input from within the research groups in terms of how those research groups are set up and constituted, but also how they're collaborating with others, should encourage all sorts of interactions across all of these disciplines. I think it's important to stress that.
Thanks, Stephen. Again, so another slightly more technical question, which activities will be funded in the consortia phase and which will be funded in the following research project phase? So Joe, I know you talked about this in your presentation. Perhaps you could just give a bit more detail around that.
So the consortia are the first phase of the APDP. There will be subsequent tranches of funding which will be separate from the consortia, in that they will be open to all, but we would hope that those would also align with the consortia. It doesn't stop those in the consortia from bidding in for the additional programs of work, but it doesn't exclude others who aren't funded within the consortia to also participate. And I think that's really important because we are building up the community. We want to make sure that as we move forward, we are flexible in our approaches, but as the research questions kind of formulate, we know that we need a diverse set of investigators to be able to address those. So we are currently looking at the consortia call at this phase. We will look at the launching a call in due course for the online data platform as well, which will also be an open call. And then the subsequent funding will be for the additional research funding projects. Once again, open to all investigators, but we do expect that those would interact as part of the consortium network as well, so that it is a fully holistic network of research that we are funding through this initiative.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to move now to a question that's come in from one of our attendees today around how to sort of strategically align the consortia. So would the panel facilitate or modify consortia strategically? Dave, do you want to take that one?
So part of my role to try and bring this together to facilitate synergies. And as I said earlier, you and I don't know what the consortia applications are going to be at the moment. So we can't possibly know what those synergies will be. And you'll have seen in the call that it is our plan to share information between consortia bids that have been invited to full application, try and help build on the synergies that we recognise and identify within the expressions of interest. And that I see as being an ongoing process. And I would anticipate that in 4 years' time, there'll be far more synergy between groups, between specialities, these areas than we currently have. That's an important output of the AP. So yes, our intention is to guide and facilitate, but that needs to come as much from consortium applicants as it will do from us in the centre.
If I could also add, I think what the expression of interest stage also allows us to do, and I think it's really important, is that it also allows us to look across what other kind of combined infrastructure is needed across the consortia and the opportunities there for building something bigger than maybe each individual consortia can bid for on its own. So I think that's a really important part of this call and why we've done the expression of interest phase, so that we can very much ensure that if there are cross-cutting infrastructure needs across the consortia in terms of platforms, etc., then we can look at how we will facilitate those across all the consortia rather than just focused in one. So that's why we have asked that if you do apply for an expression of it through the expression of interest stage, that you are willing to allow us to contact you and share potentially details of some basic details of what you're planning with other PIs as well, so that we can make sure that what we fund really works for everyone and that we don't just have siloed consortia. It really is a truly networked approach for the future.
Thanks, Joe. I've got a question here around how we will monitor progress. So how will progress be monitored and success measured in the execution phase of the consortia? So perhaps I can hand this to maybe Joe, but also Andy to talk a bit about how maybe the ISAB is going to be involved in this.
So in terms of monitoring progress, obviously, this will be a approach over the next few years. So We have Dave, who is our director, who will be in contact with all the consortia, seeing how they're going, but also we will ask for reports from each of the consortia to see how they're progressing, how the momentum is going. But obviously that information is also equally important for us as we launch the next aspects of the APDP and the other funding calls that we look to make. Because we don't want to be duplicative, we want to make sure that we are looking at what the needs are of the community as a whole, and that those other funding tranches will also be responsive to that, not only the needs of the consortia, but the wider research community. So I will also pass over to Andy, who is our chair of our International Scientific Advisory Board, who also helps us to see, where the gaps, the opportunities are, and how we can ensure that actually we are being innovative and transformative in the pain research field.
Thank you, Jo. Well, I suppose if I try and encapsulate what we'll be looking for as the kind of, I suppose people just watching over this, it needs to be exciting. So if we're just doing the same stuff we've been doing for years and years, I don't think pain is going to move forward. So what we will be looking for, and for Dave to be delivering on, and for this program of work to delivering on, is something fresh and exciting. And I think that means, as I mentioned when I gave my sort of few slides earlier on, we need to be reaching into areas of science which we haven't reached into before. We need to be drawing the best brains and the best groups into pain research to help us take these leaps forward. So if the consortia isn't multidisciplinary, I don't think it should get funded. If it's not got some exciting, fresh ideas that are genuinely new, then I don't think it should get funded. And so multidisciplinarity, fresh new ideas would be the things that I would be wanting to make absolutely sure are at the core of each of these consortia bids that come forward. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Okay, so another question from one of our attendees today. Is there any mechanism for investigators who have expertise in a specific area, e.g. a particular type of imaging, but do not perhaps have the necessary links to lead a full consortium, to speed date with potential partners? David, can I offer that one to you?
And I think that's part of my role, and I may not be aware of everybody who's going to put an application in. People are welcome to discuss with me, and I can help put people in contact with people. So I was explaining that beyond the expression of interest period, there will also be opportunities for additional partners to come into consortia for the full application.
Thanks, David. Along the similar lines, we've actually had a question: how do people who are offering lived experience of dealing with chronic pain join the platform more widely? And can this include people not living in the UK? I don't know, Dave, if you've want to take that one as well, or hand it to someone else?
There's people living with pain, and there's people caring for people. We see the APDP as having an international impact. Although it may be a UK initiative, the impact of it should be much broader than the shores of the UK. And I think having a breadth of experience and partners from outside the UK may be important. It does, as Jo was saying earlier, it needs to be justified why that's doing something different, what we can do with the expertise and experience that we already have in the UK.
Thank you.
Sorry, Claire, shall I add a little? I think it's. I think the question was also David very pointed out very well there the fact we've got people with the lived experience, and that includes people caring for people with pain, in chronic pain. We would, as a charity, we'd be happy to talk to anyone that wants to understand a little bit more around how to involve people with the condition in their study. And as you. For anyone that's interested in finding out about studies that might be able to accommodate them, we can advise on that too. So we understand, I suppose, that not for every research team, is this an easy journey to understand how to involve people with conditions well in their research? And that word well is really critical. And so we'd be happy to talk to anyone that has any questions about that versus arthritis. That's something that we're working hard on.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so the next question, can consortia bid to establish new biomaterial resources from cohorts, or is it expected that biomaterials will be available already? Joe, do you want to take that one?
So we would, it really depends on, in some ways, the research question that you're looking to answer. We would expect that there would already be some biomaterial resources out there that people already have and will be interrogating. But there may be, as you move forward, you know, newer cohorts of patient groups that you want to set up, and you know, you do need to take various samples, etc. And you know, you can bid in for those as well. But it would very much depend on what is the nature of the research questions that the consortia you're pulling together is looking to explore. I can see Stephen wishing to come in.
I wasn't. I was waiting to address a correction from the last question, actually. Sorry, I didn't want. So,
no,
so I'll leave. Okay, Claire, I just wanted to make up the point. I think the last question talked about the lived experience of databases. I think I was addressing the question as if it was the lived experience with pain. I think the question.
No, it was the lived experience. It was the lived experience.
There was a correction that I saw come through about the lived experience of using databases.
Okay, thanks. So next question, is there potential to incorporate animal research within the consortia, or is the focus strongly on clinical or human experimental approaches? Who wants to take that one? Dave, thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So we want cutting edge fundamental research as well as patient-based research. And so obviously whatever methodology you're proposing needs to be the best methodology for answering the big question you've got. But certainly identifying new targets, developing new fundamental understanding is a key part of the APD. So don't get me wrong when I'm saying that the impact is on patients. I'm not saying that the impact within the 4 years will never necessarily be realized for patients for all aspects of what the APDP is doing. But one needs to be able to look out to why what you're doing would have an impact on people currently living with chronic pain, preventing people in the future living with chronic pain. And I personally believe there are multiple disciplines ranging from molecular biology, statistics, preclinical pharmacology, psychology. There are many disciplines that can help us to address the problem of chronic pain.
And can I just add to that? And you know, we are conscious as a funder that translation takes many forms, and bidirectional transfer, you know, whilst you know, this is in some ways human facing at the outset, but we do understand, as Dave has pointed out, that you know, there does need to be at times some back translation as well to kind of really unpick the mechanisms of pain.
Thanks, Joe. Stephen, my apologies. I've just seen the correction to the question that you corrected me on. The question about lived experience was about using their experiences in the database and not as partners. So sorry, did you want to say anything else on that?
Well, other than they want to, I don't know that this has an easy answer. I'm wondering about the premise of the question. Is the lived experience has always been painful, and what will we do to ensure that you know, an online platform is accessible comprehensively, I think is the question. That is indeed our endeavour, but I don't know if others have picked up a different meaning within the question. It's a bit of a challenging one to understand in the written form, I think.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So actually on the subject of the database, how multimodal is the online database, and is it anticipated that consortia would aim to populate this with primary data as projects progress?
So we will be doing a scoping phase for the data platform, because we really think it's important that we understand what's out there, what are the needs of the community across the breadth of the research domains, so that whatever we set up is set up right and as future-proof as we go forward. The consortia will be expected to feed into that data platform, but that data platform will be open access and accessible to others. So we will release details in the next few months around the scoping phase and how you as a research community will be contacted and can interact with that, so that we make sure that whatever we build is addressing the needs that you have in terms of data.
Thanks, Jo. So the next question is, again, a slightly more technical one. Is the project open for early career researchers to apply to? Jo, again, sorry, do you want to take that one?
So yes, we do hope that there will be some aspects of capacity building through the consortia approach. I do think it is important, though, that whoever leads the consortia does have the experience of doing so, you know, with a big kind of multi-disciplinary consortia. So I do think that needs to be taken into account. But we do hope that there will be a mix of experience between the consortia, so that we can make sure that actually we are building the next generation of pain researchers. Dave, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else?
I don't think I can add anything else. I think that's very succinctly and very clearly. It is capacity building we're doing. We value expertise and potential at whatever stage of career.
Thanks, Dave. So next question, are proposals aimed at developing new technologies that can identify new biomarkers or deliver treatments for pain out of scope for this call, noting that EPSRC is not in the partnership of funders? David, can I hand this one to you?
Well, they're certainly not outside the remit of this call. Jo may be a better person to answer the sort of relationship with EPSRC.
So I think, you know, it is something that we can discuss as we move forward, whether other research councils wish to participate. I think it also depends on the state of in terms of where you are in the research development pipeline with regards to your technology. I think it would be very difficult to have a purely technologically focused consortia, because the aim of this is very much to look at the underpinning mechanisms of pain as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean to say that technological development can't arise out of whatever comes out of the consortia, but do contact us and we can have a direct discussion about what you're proposing, and then we can work out the best way to support you in that.
Thanks, Jo. Do we have any exemplars of successful, disruptive or innovative consortia approaches that we can learn from or mimic? For example, in the UK, in other disease areas, or internationally in the pain field? Does anyone want to offer to take that one? Stephen? Thank you.
I think this is subjective. I'm going to argue no. We'd like to think this is a first, but it would not a first necessarily in the consortia, because, you know, one of the things we looked at when we were doing the early work on looking at what sort of national platform might be needed to tackle the challenge of chronic pain. Of course, we looked at things like the Dementia Research Institute and the platforms there around dementia research. So I think there are other places you can look. I think the needs of a specific field like pain, and David will, I'm sure, have a view on this, may have unique needs. We're off, I think, while we have good research in the UK in chronic pain. We certainly have some excellent researchers, and we hope that many of them are listening today. We might argue it's not as cohesive as it needs to be, and is perhaps a little fragmented and needs some building in certain areas. So in a sense, for pain, for me, I'm going to argue we would like to see this as a first, but you can learn from other disease areas, perhaps like dementia. But David, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are.
Clearly there are other consortia, but I'd be very wary of recommending one consortium model yourself on, because that wouldn't be particularly new or a step change if it's already been done. I think the point is a really important one. Actually, there is a particular issue with chronic pain. Much of the research that's been done in the past has, to an extent, been siloed by diagnosis. Not all of it, by any stretch of the imagination. And that's really why I think that there is a huge potential of developing consortium at this stage.
Thanks, Dave. So someone has asked if we can tell you something about the assessment procedures for expressions of interest and then for full applications. Joe, I'm going to pass this one to you.
So we will have an internationally leading panel that will assess the expressions of interest. And it will also be that same panel that will look at the full application so that we have continuity for that. There will be further information on who that panel is put up on our website in due course.
Thanks, Joe. There's a question here. As an industry partner, we specialise in a particular treatment for chronic pain relief. Should we partner with an academic centre or an NHS trust to submit an expression of interest? And who should lead the project?
So I can take that again. So there is nothing to stop industry partners partnering with the consortia. As I mentioned earlier, please do look on our website for the guidance around that, because there are specific terms that need to be looked at for industry academic partnerships. However, all consortium do need to be led by an academic at an academic institution.
Thank you. And I think this is probably going to be the final question. Again, a sort of technical one. Is there a limit to the number of co-investigators and or collaborators?
So that's always an interesting question, these things. I mean, it really depends on you know, the focus of the consortia. Now, it does need to be a manageable consortia, and everyone does need to have a role within it. So I think, you know, rather than saying you can only have however many, I think it's up to each group to see what are the benefits of having X number of people within that, and what is the role that each of those people will play to move forward the pain research agenda. I might hand over to Dave if he also has any advice around this.
I think we'll have to remember that the platform will constitute maybe 3, maybe 4, 5 consortia. And certainly we expect the consortia to be working together. If you have a very large football team of members of the consortium, I think you have to think carefully as to whether anybody is going to be able to do enough to be able to make a step change. On the other hand, if you have a very small group of people, and then the chances are you won't have the necessary expertise to do everything you're wanting to do. So it's got to be a balance at the end of the day. Again, following on from somebody else's question earlier, it may be that you feel that you need additional expertise to enable your consortium to succeed. And I'd be very keen to try and facilitate that if that's a particular issue.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's time to wrap up the Q&A now. So thanks everyone for all your questions, and I'm going to hand back over to Joe for the final. Thank you. Yep.
That's great. Thanks. Thank you, Claire, for leading us through all the questions, really great questions. Please don't worry if we didn't get round to answering your question in this webinar. We will collate all the questions and we will post those on our website along with all the answers to those questions. And we will also be posting the webinar so that you can watch it again or pass on to your colleagues who may not have been able to attend today's live link. Please do also know that we are here to answer your questions and work with you as the research community. So please do email the team at the SPF Pain email, which is listed there. And if you would like to contact Professor Walsh directly to see how you can link up with other researchers, etc., his email is also there and will be on our website as well. So please do check there for any further information. And as I say, please do not hesitate to contact us as needed. We are here very much to help. Please also do complete the post-webinar survey. Details are on our website, and it will be really helpful for us as we move forward with this initiative to have as much information as possible as we move forward. So on that note, I would very much like to thank my colleagues here for speaking today, Stephen Simpson, David Walsh and Andrew Carr. I'd like to thank the team who've put all of this together, Gemma, Steve and Claire, for helping us run this webinar very much in a very virtual way. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day. And as I say, please do contact us as needed as we move forward with this exciting initiative. Thank you very much, everyone.